Sure. We'll start with Patanjali chant. Time's on. Yogena citasya padena vacham malam sharirasya chavaijakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankar Chakra Siddharinam Sahasra Shirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Hari Om.
Om Sato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Maiti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam Tenamam Pahi Nityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. O Lord, guide us through and through, and ever protect us with thy loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you everyone for coming today. And thank you, Carolyn, for inviting me here. It's nice that we have a sort of a smaller group because then we can keep this more informal and a little bit more conversational. There's one Swami, I'm from the Ramakrishna order, the Vedanta monastery in San Diego. And one senior Swami, Swami Harinamananda, used to say that spirituality should be taught in small groups. And actually, traditionally in India, it was taught in a Gurukula system, meaning it was taught in small groups with a very few students at a time. It was until Swami Vivekananda, who first introduced Hinduism to America, that we started seeing large masses being taught by a single person. So this is not just sort of out of the ordinary. And so I like the groups because we can relate from where we're coming from. And I like to keep it like that. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add or comment on, please be free to do so. I'm much more of an informal type of person than formality. I don't like formalities. So today we are here to talk about the Gunas. And can I just ask a question? How many people have heard of the Gunas? Just by show of hands. Great. And hearing means, did you study it, or kind of like, what do you guys know? So do you know the 3 different Gunas, and have you been studying it for a little bit of time?
Just a little bit of time. I have an infantile experience with studying it.
Okay, good. It's a little bit of a complex subject, and you find that it's primarily, you find it in scripture called the Bhagavad Gita. As Carolyn was also showing, it's in the Yoga Sutras, but primarily you have a few chapters dedicated to the Gunas in the Gita itself. And so today, as we talk a little bit about this, I'm going to allude to the Bhagavad Gita as our kind of our source and reference point. And also, another reference book I'll be using is The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. How many people have heard of the saint Sri Ramakrishna? So Sri Ramakrishna was, just to give you a little bit also, a little bit of who he is. Sri Ramakrishna was a saint in the 1800s, from 1836 to 1886. And he was a saint in Calcutta, and he basically, one of the unique things that he has done is that not only did he, in the Rig Vedas, there's a saying, it's called Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti. Truth is one. Sages call it by various names. And the idea here is that there is one ultimate truth, and there are just different paths leading to that same truth. And Sri Ramakrishna, in his life, was a lover of God. He wanted to experience God in various ways, in various paths. So he had not only in Hinduism we have so many, like in Christianity you have so many sects, in Hinduism we have also so many sects. So he practiced various paths of Hinduism, and he came to the experience that there's this one ultimate reality, and it can be experienced in all these various paths. Then he branched out, like a person who loves good food, but they don't want to just stick with Indian food or French food. They want to try all the different varieties of food. So he was experiencing Christianity. He experienced Buddhism. He became in Islam, and he followed the protocol of Islam, and he became one as what we call a spiritual practitioner. And ultimately, he had experienced that same ultimate reality in all these various paths. So basically, the idea here is that when you look at any religion, talked about that religion, if you can think of it as three concentric circles. We don't have a board, do we?
Oh, yeah, we do. Okay.
I forgot.
You can think of any religion as three concentric circles. On the outermost circle, we think about like the rituals, the protocols, the do's and don'ts of religion. We fast this many days. We don't wear our shoes in the temple. We wear these kind of dresses. These are kind of like the do's and don'ts, the rituals, the protocols of various religions. And that's where you find religions differ the most. I'm part of the interreligious community in San Diego. And when we have these interreligious gatherings, you'll find that a lot of these religions do talk about sort of the outermost circle. This is what we do. We have our festivities, our practice, our days that we do these fastings, the days that we read the scriptures, the days that we chant. In our innermost circle, okay, you'll find that the various practices of religions, and there you'll find much more of a common denominator. You'll find that there's practices of meditation, practices of selfless service, practices of reading the scriptures, practices of prayers. So in that you'll find that, wow, these religions have much more in common. Why can't we just all practice? Then, when you go to the heart of religion, Swami Vivekananda used to say, what is religion? Religion means realization. If you are not transforming in the path that you're undertaking, that path is not good for you. Religion should ultimately lead you to some type of transformation. And what is that transformation? At the core of all religions is experience. And when it comes to the fundamental experience of each of these religions, you find that's where we are very similar. The experience of feeling a oneness with everything. The experience of spontaneous love arising from within you. The experience of feeling deep sense of peace. And the experience of seeing a unity in all this diversity. And who is the ones that experiences it? Well, it's not the people on the outer core of the religion. Those are usually your preachers. They talk, they have book knowledge, but they don't really practice. The people who are the practitioners are what we call the mystics of various traditions. In the Sufi tradition, in the Hindu tradition, in the Christian mystic saints. If you were to get a group of saints together, you'd find that their experiences would be very, very similar. And that although they're talking maybe a different language in the way they approach the ultimate reality, the way they approach the divine, the experience you'll find underlying that is there's these principles of truth, of love, of unity. These are the fundamental principles that you'll find that are common in all traditions. That is the heart of any religion, and that's what religion is supposed to do. Vivekananda, the saint who brought Hinduism to America, had said, it's good to be born in church, but it's not good to die in one. It's good to be born in a church, but not to die in one. What did he mean by that? He meant that it's okay to be born in that outermost circle, but you can't stay there. It has to become your own. You have to make it your own. And so, when I was, and how it becomes your own is you'll experience in your own unique way. There was I may have mentioned this before. I went to a world religion class. And in that class, they talked about Hinduism. They said, there's 333 million gods in Hinduism. And I went to a Swami, why are there 333 million gods? Don't we have just one divine reality? And he said, yes, but the population was 333 million at that time. So each one of us has our own unique personality. Each one of us has certain unique characteristics and traits. We're all like on the spoke of a wheel, and we're all approaching that same divine reality in different ways. So we have to find first of all, in this Guna talk today, we're going to start to understand what is our swabhava. What is our own inner disposition? What is unique to us? What makes us us? Right now, we're all unique individual human beings. So we have to find our own unique way. And once we understand what is our swabhava, our predisposition, then we go, what is our swadharma? Dharma means our path, our inner path to enlightenment. And that path will be unique to each one of us. And even though you can say, well, I belong to Christianity, or I belong to Hinduism, that's true. But each within that, you'll see that each one of us may see that ultimate reality, the divine, in different ways. I may see that divine reality when I was in high school. I used to see that same God as a coach. Like I used to be really into sports. And that coach would be like, okay, I want you to keep going, I want you to stop here. And the way, as we continue to grow, the way we see God will also grow. And so basically, also, I may be more meditative, introspective. Carolyn may be more extroverted. So her path, her ways, she may do service, or I may be more meditative. There's going to be combinations within each one of us. So we're here to find what is our combination? What is our way towards that reality? And that's what the Gunas, I think, are going to help us with today. It's getting to a little bit to know, understanding who we are. Anybody have any questions before we continue on? Okay. So let's talk about the Gunas here. I think a good way to begin with this is that what have you guys heard about the Gunas? What are the Gunas? If I were to ask you what the Gunas are, what do you think they are? How do you define them?
Qualities of nature or prakriti. The qualities.
Qualities of nature
Mm-hmm.
or prakriti. Okay.
They're energies.
Okay. Anybody else? I'd like to give you share a little bit of a story, maybe that relates to the Gunas. Anybody a procrastinator? Okay. In college, I was a big procrastinator, and I still have some of the residual effects today. There was a story on procrastination on TED Talk, and I love the story, and I'm going to use that story to talk about in the framework of the Guna. You know when you're given an assignment, and especially like a talk, and you have 1 month to prepare for this talk. And you know, as Swamis, we've got to prepare for talks. And you start off thinking, okay, I'm going to do this talk right now. What happens? So there's this side within us, this personality. It's the rational thinker. It says, okay, you've got a month. Let's plan this talk out. Let's do a little bit each day, and we can get the talk done by the time our talk is due. As we begin, guess what happens? Another side of our personality, I'm going to call it the Tamasic monkey. The Tamasic monkey in each one of us wants instant gratification. It wants what is fun and easy. So as I begin my talk, all of a sudden, this monkey mind comes within me, and he said, what are you doing? You have a whole month before the talk. Don't you know there's like a football game going on now? Don't worry, take a relax. Go relax, go do something else. You have plenty of time. So that monkey mind comes in and takes over. And so it takes over, and about 2 weeks, it's always convincing the rational thinker that, you know, don't worry about it, there's still plenty of time. You'll get it done. You got this. So, guess what happens? 3 days before the talk, guess who emerges out? It's the image monster. We all have this also within us. And this image monster awakens. And it says, hey, what's going on here? You've got 3 days before this talk is coming up, and you haven't done anything. You're going to look like a fool. You better get to work. And the monkey's there saying, no, we still got time. And the monk starts to growl, get out of here. And he chases the monkey up the tree. Okay? When everything starts to calm down, the rational thinker starts to come through. And then, within the last day and a half, it starts to get to business. And insights start to come up, and it starts to get to work. And it's flooded with the adrenaline of the image monster because it's scared to death about looking like a fool in front of the audience it's in. So these three kind of represent the 3 different energies, as Anne was saying, that's inherent within us. Gunas. And basically, I'm just going to give you the technical definition here. Gunas are subtle qualities or energies. They're forces that create the fabric of what we experience in front of us. They're the fabric of our mind, the fabric of our body, the fabric of nature. They're defined as strands or ropes. Why do we call these energies or forces ropes? Well, it's because these energies tie us down. They tie down you as the infinite reality. In the Hindu belief, we believe you are the infinite spirit with infinite awareness, infinite joy. The Gunas tie you down and limit you to an individual being. And that individual being has limited awareness. You experience limited joy and limited happiness. And these gunas are in constant motion. They're changing in 3 ways, which I'll talk a little bit more. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And these changes we observe within our own mind. We also observe them in nature. Has anybody actually seen your own moods during the day? How it changes? You'll have a morning mood, you'll have an afternoon mood, you'll have an evening mood. Our moods are constantly changing. What is this due to? It's due to the gunas. You know, in India, they actually have a whole science behind this. So they have a science in terms of music. They have what's called ragas. So, in the morning, they play morning ragas to try to diffuse whatever guna you're experiencing to get you in a more uplifted state. And then, if you're in a very active state, they have an afternoon raga to calm you down, maybe. And then they have an evening raga. All this is to try to keep you in an equilibrium state. These gunas are what causes our thoughts to constantly change, our energy to constantly change. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to start to become aware of these gunas within us and also the gunas outside of us. Okay? So how do these gunas, I talked about, how do these gunas bind us? I just want to get to some technicalities before we can just freely start to discuss this. How do they bind us? How do they bind us into this body-mind complex? Well, Krishna says in the Gita that it is 3 gunas born of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, that bind the immortal self. Remember, you are that immortal self. They bind the immortal self to this limited body you're experiencing right now. Sattva is pure, luminous, and free from sorrow. It binds us. How does it bind us? With happiness and knowledge. What is that experience for us? Have you ever had a good meditation? What do you feel after a good meditation? Or a good yoga session? What's your experience? Huh?
A sense of well-being.
A sense of well-being?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Calmness.
A sense of calmness. Anybody else?
Peace and clarity.
Yes. So that's what Sattva's doing here. It's Krishna is trying to bind you. You want that to continue on. You don't want to leave that state. But what happens after you drive away, and maybe within 5-10 minutes, they go back to all these different states. So that's one way it's trying to bind you. Rajas is restless activity, rising from desire and attachment, binding us with action. Rajas is binding us with action. How does action bind us? Anybody? When we do something, how are we being bound by what we do?
We remain attached to a certain result.
Yes. We expect a certain result, first of all. And if we don't get that certain result, we feel disappointed. And then if we get it, we want to hold on to it. We want to be credited for it. We want to be recognized for it. So Rajas binds us with the activities that we do by the recognition that we desire, to the fruits of what we're doing. Tamas is the next guna. Tamas veils the mind in ignorance. It distorts our understanding and binds us with delusion. Tamas, it binds us in ignorance. It veils the mind in ignorance and distorts our understanding with delusion. How do you think Tamas binds us?
Well, you have to grow to change, and if you are tamasic, you would just be stuck in that moment.
Right. So we like being stuck in that moment. We don't feel the need to grow and change. So it's like, in one sense, it's like we just want to be comfortable. For some of us, we just want to be comfortable being asleep, not awakening to what's going on around us because we just feel more comfortable that way. We feel like sort of like the ostrich with its head in the hole. We don't care if the line is outside, we just care right now what we're feeling. And it's that comfort, that security that we feel when we're in ignorance that we want to maintain. Tamas. So, again, today, what we're doing here today is we're going to start gaining a little self-awareness about how these gunas are playing into our life. And then, not only when we get self-awareness, then we can start to transform ourselves. We can start to use the gunas to our own advantage. So when life is throwing, say, a tamasic feeling at us, or a rajasic feeling, how can we counteract these gunas to rise above it, so that we're not bound by these gunas? Is that understood? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go chipping away a little bit, like a sculptor. We're going to get a little feeling, an essence for what these things are and how they are experienced in our lives. Well, did we have that? We didn't have the board, huh?
Yeah, it's
Swami.
over
Okay.
there.
So,
I can move it onto that side if you
no,
want.
it's okay. It's okay. Can everybody see?
No,
Okay.
you have to move.
And move over all of them,
If
right?
I move this,
You know
can I
what?
move this over a little?
Can I just maybe put it over here, or then everybody can just see?
Can everyone see over there?
Is that okay?
Good?
So,
Yeah, that's good.
okay. So,
Something like that?
again, in the how the gunas shape our lives. So today, you know, when you start looking at gunas, today what we're going to be looking at specifically is how gunas shape our mind. Okay? When you see the gunas out in nature, you're going to see things like rajas, it'll be like energy. And if you go to Yosemite, when you see the energy of the rushing river or the waterfalls, you think of something dynamic. It's rajas. Anybody been to Yosemite? Okay. Do you remember? And then when you see something like, have you ever been to Mirror Lake? So when you see Mirror Lake, it's completely still. There's a beautiful reflection. It's like glass. And what happens when you peek into it? When you see this beautiful reflection, your mind becomes still, becomes quiet. That's this feeling of sattva that we experience in nature. And then when we see these big rocks, they're very solid, they're not movable. We think of Tamas, okay? These immovable objects, inert. So, but today, we're going to be looking at how the gunas affect our own minds, okay? So, we are this infinite reality, as I said. Eckhart Tolle taught that we are pure consciousness, pure awareness. This infinite reality is reflected in the mind. And in a pure, transparent mind, when our mind is clear, an awareness illumines the entire mind. And that awareness illumines everything that we experience. It illumines the entire room. It's like a candle. Think of a lantern. And in the lantern, you have what do you call the fire inside the lantern. And
Flame.
in a completely, what's it called? Huh?
The flame?
The flame. And the glass case is our mind. When infinite awareness, infinite spirit reflects in our pure mind, we get the sense of this, there's an awareness within each one of us. That spark of consciousness. Okay. And then when that consciousness is in a clear mind, we're aware of everything going on around us. There's an awareness that's all around us, and we feel we're in equilibrium. We're at peace. We're centered. This is called a sattvic mind. It's Iyengar calls it, a sattvic mind is luminous. It has the power to reveal. It has a revealing power. What does it reveal? It has the power to illumine knowledge and give us insights. You ever have some of those moments when you have those aha moments?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's when the mind has calmed down, cleared up, and then we get an insight. That's his sattvic mind. Then the mind gets clouded again. So when the mind starts to get partially clouded because of desires, it's got desires here, what happens? What happens when, say, the sun illumines a mirror, and the mirror, then the light focuses out in a particular direction? What happens if there's dust particles on that mirror? It gets projected out like shadows onto whatever the light is illuminating. Similarly, our desires in our mind, when that light of awareness, our infinite awareness, illumines our mind and it has desires, it projects those desires out into the world. And those desires are like money, relationships, maybe it's the house that we want. All that are desires within our mind. It's our awareness, like a sun magnifying the mirror of our mind. And the light that's projected out creates a circle of light. That is our awareness. It's what we become aware of. So, in a Rajasic mind, it's called, a Rajasic mind is that which projects. It has the projecting power. It projects out our desires, and guess what? We're attracted to what we're aware of, and we seek that. And this is Rajasic. And in a Tamasic mind, when the mind is so filled with desires, it's clouded. There's so much baggage that's accumulated in the mind. The awareness, the light which illumines that mind, just gets absorbed within this. And it's like the Tamasic mind is like a black hole. There's no awareness going out. We're not aware of anybody or anything. If you're with a Tamasic person, they don't care about you because they're not even aware of you. Okay? It's just light that's illuminating their own mind. They're only aware of their own selves. We call it a very selfish person. They're very clouded. They've got so much baggage, so many desires. This power, I said this was projecting power for Rajasic. This is called veiling power. Tamasic mind is that which veils the knowledge. It veils our awareness within us. So we're just not aware of anything, anybody. We're only concerned with me, myself, and I. So, what we begin to see is that these gunas, what do they start to reveal to us? We got to be detectives here. They begin to reveal to us that these are different mental states of awareness. We have a sattvic mind is one which is full awareness. We're aware of everything, bright, sharp, clear. A mind that's Rajasic has partial awareness. And a mind that's Tamasic has very minimal awareness or no awareness at all. It's very instinctual. So, these can basically be categorized as 3 states of mind. And the states of mind are dull, active, and reflective. The 3 states of mind that we constantly go in and out of during the course of the day. This is you're going to find that this actually, you're going to start to discover what's creating us so that our mind becomes dull. We're going to start to figure this out. Who are the people that we're with that we start to get, or we start to feel this dullness within us? What triggers this? We're also going to start to figure out the active and the reflective mind. Okay, so basically here's a question for you guys. When you're feeling dull, what's the effect? What do you feel like doing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Malaise.
Huh?
Malaise.
Malaise. Okay. Anybody else? Nobody here is affected by a dull mind? That's the wrong audience.
I want to change it. I want to move into something else.
You want to change it. But sometimes when you get in that feeling of dullness, do you really want to change it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well that's good. That's very good. Okay, we'll get to that. Anybody else? What happens when you're feeling? What kind of activities do you do when you have a dull mind?
Just watch a movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you're starting to do something just passive.
It's inescapable. I'm thinking about my father when I visit him. My mind goes real dull. I find it inescapable. That you just really become, there's like inertia that sets in.
Right. That's a key word. Inertia. That's another key thing. Association starts. It's like a disease. It just rubs off on you. Okay, so that's a very good thing to detect. Again, let's make a mental note of the things within ourselves. What's causing us to feel in these three ways? What about when your mind is active? What do you feel like doing? What's your state? What do you feel like doing?
Getting more.
Getting more. Okay, yes. Anybody else? When you have an active mind,
Sometimes slowing it down.
slowing it down. Okay, so you're like at the second part of the talk. But we're talking about right now, when you have an active mind, what are the things that normally you do? When you have an active mind, what do you like?
Clean the house.
Huh?
Clean the house.
Clean the house. Okay, so you're constantly moving.
Yeah.
You're jumping from one thing to another. There's
Looking at all your apps.
huh?
Looking at all your apps.
Looking at all your
Looking at
apps.
all your apps. Yeah, right. You're excited. You're constantly in movement.
So cute.
Okay? And with a mind that's reflective, sattvic, what do you feel like doing? Now you can step in. When you have a reflective mind, what are the activities or what do you feel like?
I feel happy and I just want to enjoy it for the moments that it's there, or the hours that it's there, or
Okay?
whatever.
So there's a happiness that comes there. But that happiness is where's it coming from? Is it coming from something that you're doing?
Not necessarily.
So where's it coming from?
A connection, feeling connected with everyone and
Yeah.
everything around you. Right?
Okay. So but then that happiness is self-generated, it's coming from within.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you look at these two, how do they get happiness? Huh?
External.
Yes, they're always seeking something outside of them to make them happy. Where here we're getting a clue. So a person is sattvic minded, that happiness is coming from within. In the state of sattva, you feel more reflective, you feel more a witness. You don't feel like doing anything, you're just seeing, observing. You're more self-content. So, now the question comes then, so in this tamasic, what's covering us? When I said veiling, so what is it that's covering our mind? What's veiling our mind?
I would say fear,
Avidya.
Fear, yes.
in a broad sense, and the comfort of knowing what that situation is. I mean, I've experienced it, and I've seen people experience the comfort with their own misery.
Right, okay, yes. And they learn to just stay in that miserable state.
They're afraid to change it because it might not be better.
Yes, that's true. Anybody else? Tamas, how you experience or how you've observed others who are feeling tamasic, they feel inertia. They don't feel like moving. They just feel like staying there. They're miserable, as you were saying here. And whatever you tell them Can you move them out of that state? Not really. They're not going to listen. So, what you find that covers, for me, there's these wounds, traumas, regrets, the hurts that we've experienced in life. You get in the sense of depression. The feeling that sometimes it's just too overwhelming. That's what happens as a procrastinator sometimes. We feel too overwhelmed with what we have to do. So instead of doing what we need to do, we just get into this lethargic state. Until, guess what happens? Until that image or Josic monster comes out and says, you better do something to save your image, because otherwise, you're going to be looking like a fool. And then an adrenaline of energy comes to us. So, it's Tamas here. What do? We get in that state. We just don't want to face life. So we're looking for what? An escape. And in this tamasic feeling, let's see what Ramakrishna says here. Ramakrishna is a saint that I told you about. He says the characteristics of sattva, rajas, and tamas are very different. Egotism, sleep, gluttony, lust, anger, and the like are traits of people with tamas. They just feel like being in the drowsy state. So what do they end up doing? Their awareness only exists within their individual body. Whatever pleases their body, they're going to do. Sleep, gluttony, lust, anger. You know what these are called? They're called the six, Ramakrishna calls them the 6 crocodiles. And they think Christianity made the 7 deadly sins. You know why they're called crocodiles? Because, has anybody ever been bitten by a crocodile? Once they lock their chops on you, it's difficult to get out. Once you get into the nature of this, you're very difficult to get released from. Like addictions. They're powerful, they have strong clamps on you. So to me, what he's saying here is that, what does this represent? This represents your individual consciousness. Your consciousness is not going out, it's only staying within the comforts of its own body. And, okay. So, your awareness is only illuminating the body. So anything that feels the body, feels the pleasure of the body, that keeps it in inertia is happiness. So what does a person who's in this tamasic state do? Well, the number one thing they do is eat comfort food. Lust, addictions, compulsive behaviors. Why? Why do they do this? Because it keeps you numb. It's like putting you in a state of anesthesia. So you don't have to deal with the outside world. You don't have to deal with anybody else. You want to remain in that state. And what is your identity? Your identity is that of a victim. You feel you have the victim consciousness. And your mindset, when you're in this state here, the mindset of the victim is that they don't think, they just dwell. You know what we do? We build up mechanisms on how to escape from reality. And when I was my parents told me something that I didn't want to do. I had a number of excuses. That's the tamasic aspect of me coming out here. We build up excuses. Oh, if only this were to happen. Or what if this happens? Anything that will not move us out of this state. We build up a fantasy world in which we engage in, because we don't want to deal with the reality of things. And we regurgitate the same thoughts again and again about our low self-esteem. Anybody that comes will share our blame story, how it's not our fault. We'll say, oh, poor pathetic me. You know, life is being done to me. We feel very passive, and even the smallest things like brushing your teeth become huge tasks. Like, oh my God, you want me to take out the trash? It's a huge amount of energy to push them into moving the trash. They just want to stay in that state. They want to stay the same. That's Tamas. Start to see, are there parts in our lives that we resist movement, that we want to stay because for one reason or another we just don't want to move out?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you were mentioning those traits, what I thought of is those people that just sit and meditate in nature.
Yes.
And I consider that to be also an escape of reality and just shutting out from the world. So would you consider those people that isolate themselves and meditate for years and years and not eat or socialize also tamasic?
It's a very good question. So we're going to get to that. It's a really good question because we're going to see what those type of people actually are. Okay? So after I'm done a little bit, get further. If that question's still not answered, then ask at that time. It's good. Good question. She's asking, people that go in meditation and stuff, it appears that they also are very tamasic. Is that true? Well, again, we'll put our detective hats and we're going to figure that out. Now, what about Rajas? So here we talked about, let's see what Ramakrishna says about Rajas here. What projects us? Remember I told you about what's veiling? So we talked about what covers us. Well, now, in the Rajasic state, we're talking about projection. What projects, what causes us to move? Anybody? What causes you to move?
The energy within you or around you. Like if you get super excited about something, then it's within inside of you and you want to go do it. Or if
Right.
people are around you that are
Right.
excited, then you feel more excited.
Exactly. So again, but you said when you get excited about something, so what it is, it's a desire. So what we find is desires start to excite us. And you know what? All of these states you're going to start to find is that they're spectrums. So what you start to discover is that there's Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva all have sort of they're different spectrums. The very tamasic person here is one who's completely inactive. They're just bedridden. They just don't want to get out of bed. They just want to stay there. It ends, that tamasic energy ends when what? When you finally say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Then what happens? Then we start to move into Rajas. And where does Rajas begin? It begins with an intention, a sankalpa. It begins with the sense that it sees a little glimmer of light in this previously dark room. It begins to dream. It begins to have a goal. It dreams big and starts small. It starts with where you are and what you have. And you start to cultivate that desire more and more. So the desire becomes very strong in Rajas. You know what happens? You start saying, I want to be somebody. I want to get something. I want to be recognized for what I do. It's the sense that I feel now I want to prove something to myself and I want to prove something to others. And where does it end? It ends in accomplishing your goal. So, that's when you see the turning point from Tamas to Rajas. It begins with the desire, an intention that I want to move out of this, and I'm starting to have a goal to move towards. That's the Rajas. We start to project out of ourselves. That desire starts to rise, and we start to now wanting to reach out and move towards that desire. Let's see what Ramakrishna says about Rajas. He says here, men with Rajas entangle themselves in many activities. Such a man has clothes all spick and span. His house is immaculately clean. A portrait of the queen, this is in India now, hangs on the wall in his drawing room. When he worships God, he wears a silk cloth. He has a string of Rudraksha beads around his neck, and in between the beads, he puts a few gold ones. When someone comes to visit the worship hall in his house, he himself acts as a guide. After showing the hall, he says to the visitor, "Please come this way, sir. There's still many other things too. The floor of white marble, and the Nat Mandir with its exquisite carvings. When he gives in charity, he makes a real show of it." So, Rajas here, then basically here, what we start to see is that in Rajas you start to cultivate an image. You want to project out an image. You want to create an image that you want people to notice. Why? Because you want to be seen. Now, these are not, I'm not saying anything good or bad. This is what's necessary. You want to be recognized. You need a little bit, you want to have your name, have some fame, get some status. You want to stand out. This is Rajas. So, what we start to see then, in a Rajasic identity, the identity of someone who's Rajasic is not a victim, but is a manifester. He or she is a doer. They say, impossible? No, I'm possible. We have a person, Jayanti, a person in our San Diego Center. She's a paraplegic. And she had told me in college she was not going to have this paraplegic, this stop her. And she said, I'm going to experience life. She's actually gone to India in the 1980s and went around in a place at a time when it was very difficult. She actually goes swimming every weekend. And she handles our website. She creates these flyers and she writes beautiful articles on the divine. She's an amazing person. She does not allow her physical handicap to stop her. And you know, another thing she also, when Swami was saying, sometimes in the Indian philosophy we have kind of like the law of karma. And the law of karma states for, you know, that you're born like this because of the karma you've done in the past. I'm sure you guys have heard that, right? So you know what one Swami had said? You get not necessarily, it may look deceiving, thinking, oh, maybe this person did some bad things and that's why she's being born in this body. But the idea here, though, in the law of karma is really, you're getting the experiences you need to get to the next step in your goal. And when you see her, you see that she's a person who's really it's like all these outgoing experiences are done. She's now really going inward. She meditates a great deal. She's a very advanced soul. And the experiences maybe she needs in this lifetime are not things that need to be externally projected with the Rajasic body in mind. She is now internally, the consciousness is internally going within. And so in some respects, she's a much more advanced soul. Because if I had that type of body, I'd be miserable. And I'd be, where would I be? I would be in a tamasic state. Why did this happen to me? And start blaming everything and God and everything itself. She is in a very Sattvic state, which we'll talk about. So, the attitude of a Rajasic person is one who says, look at me. Life is being done by me. You feel very active. You can do anything. And your motto unlike the tamasic person who just resists any movement, the rajasic person will say, don't just sit there, do something. Okay. So that's the state of rajas. Now, what about sattva? Sattva is we talked about sattva as that which is revealing. I told you, Ahingar said, that which is, that which illumines. What is illumined in sattva? In our mind, what is illumined? Knowledge. When we're in a sattvic state, our mind is now on the verge of, it's in the quest to know the truth. You know, when sattva starts, when it begins, and when rajas end, when the mind, which is going out, trying to fulfill its desires, starts to turn in, starts to want to know itself. The turning point is when we come to sattva. It's the turning point of reflection. It turns to the quest to know the truth. It's the turn of our awareness into the deep regions of our mind. It seeks just to understand without judgment, without putting its own biases. It just wants to know why the way things are the way they are. We had just on Sunday, last Sunday, we had a person from the nonviolent communications come and gave a workshop at our monastery. And he was basically talking about communications and how to communicate in a way that you can let go of your biases so you can really listen to people and hear what they're saying. And what we find is very difficult. You know what the number one thing of discussion when you go to a barber shop is? I'm taking a poll, meaning I asked two barbers when I got my hair cut. Like, one of them. The number one thing that's being discussed right now is Trump. And so, I mean, there are people that are pro or against, but that's the number one topic of discussion. And it's a very heated discussion. And as soon as you mention the name, some people start to color their mind. And you can't have a discussion that is unbiased. So how can we learn to really listen and unfilter our minds so we can see things as they are? This is sattva. Sattva is trying to understand that this universe has polarities, that there's good and there's bad, and that there's a mixture of opposites in this universe. You can't never have a perfectly good place. You can't never have a perfectly bad place. There's always going to be this combination, permeation. This is what life is. Life is what we call duality. To know what is good, you have to have something bad. To know what is good food, you have had to have tasted bad food. When you're in the sattvic state of mind, your seeking is not to know your outer purpose. Your seeking now is to know your inner purpose. It's the insights, understandings, and clarity that we get when we're in balance, when we're in harmony, and when we're in stillness. You know what happens when you see like if you go to Mirror Lake, and when it's very still, if you look, you can actually see the bottom. You can see to the depth, the bottom. That's what it is. When our mind is perfectly still, we can see at the bottom of the mind our true divine awareness. So, what does Ramakrishna say about sattva? But a man endowed with sattva is quiet and peaceful. So far as dress is concerned, anything will do. He earns enough money to give his stomach the simplest of food. He never flatters men to get money. He doesn't hanker for name or fame. His worship, charity, and meditation are all done in secret. He doesn't want recognition. People do not know about them at all. He meditates inside his mosquito curtain. People think he doesn't sleep well at night, and for that reason, sleeps late in the morning. Sattva is the last step of the stairs. Next is the roof. As soon as sattva is acquired, there's no further delay in attaining God. one step forward and God is realized to the subject. Can you say that all men were equal? Now you see that there are so many varieties of human nature. So, what we see here is where Rajas was really about our I consciousness, our ego, making something of who we are. Sattva is about someone who's in egoless state. And I call it someone who has a sense of expanded consciousness. How many people go work out like in the gym? By show of hands. Okay. So when you go, you may notice that there are some people, when they work out, the tamasic